So let me start with not a reading per se, but two quotes from two people whose names I think you will recognize. And as I said, Rhonda, I'm dedicating this to you, the goddess of the goddesses. So from Robert Louis Stevenson, how about this? The divine feminine is the power that enables us to heal ourselves and the world around us. The divine feminine is the power that enables us to heal ourselves and the world around us. And the second one is from our friend and very familiar, I'm sure to everybody, Deepak Chopra. And he says this: the divine feminine is the essence of the universe, the guiding force that leads us to our highest potential. The divine feminine is the essence of the universe, the guiding force that leads us to our highest potential. So I'm going to just talk about three of those goddesses. And as I do, if you have, I don't know, a piece of paper near you or a pen or something, if there's anything that sits with you, lands with you, strikes you, resonates with you, I would love you to make a note of it, because I'm going to try and something fairly audacious. If it doesn't work, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to lead us at the closing in a ritual. I've never done this online before, but given that we are at the start of this festival and this being an important part of the festival, I want to try. Let's give it a shot. If nothing else, the intention is there, and so is the goodwill, but it could be very powerful. But what I'd love you to do is, as I'm introducing these three very powerful goddesses to you, they each bring a representation, they each bring a message that I'm sure not just for yourselves, but also for those that you love, your community, our nations, and even our world. I'm sure there are things that are so applicable. So as Tina said, it's the 9 nights and the 10 days dedicated to the divine feminine, the life bringer, the life bearer. And it celebrates and honors the sacred divine feminine in all her names, in all her forms. And I do want to say something which was enlightening to me, and I'm sure would be interesting to you too, if you don't already sort of have the same sensibility. But a lot of people say, oh, Hinduism is just a religion full of many, many gods, and that they worship many gods. But the way that I've come to understand it, Hinduism, is that each deity is in effect like a face. It's a representation, if you will, of the supreme. Because of course, when we as human beings in our very limited way are trying to explain the almost inexplicable, we have to do it in a way that that is accessible and identifiable to us as human beings in our experience in this body. Let me give you a great example. For those of you who are familiar with Ganesh, Ganesh, of course, has the lower half of a male body and the upper half of an elephant. And I don't know if any of you have been to the Hindu temple in Queens, which is actually dedicated to Ganesh. I went there as part of my studies, And I went in my first year, and I was going through a very, very, very challenging time. It felt that my life was just sort of, I was hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. I'm sure you can identify what that feels like sometimes. And of course, I had learned that Ganesh is the remover of obstacles. And as I said to you earlier, it's not necessarily the god, but what it represents. And of course, an elephant, if you've come in close to one, and I have, thanks to my time here in South Africa, their ears are quite something. They're enormous. And then if you get very close, they're these enormous trunks, gargantuan legs, and these tiny little mouths. And part of the representation of Ganesh is that we should be like that. We should have big ears, small mouths. And there I was, pouring my heart out in this temple. There's so many different forms of Ganesh around the temple. And if you haven't been, I really would urge you to go. It really is quite something. It's got an amazing story of how it ended up in Queens, but I'll bore you with that another time. But I did. I just sat there and poured my heart out to this statue, this deity, if you will, because I felt so frustrated and so confused in my own life. And that night in my sleep, the face of Ganesh popped up and spoke to me and said, Pippa, you asked me to remove the obstacle. And I found myself nodding. And he said to me, but what if the obstacle is you? And that was a life-changing moment and the beginning of a deeper understanding in my life that I had to get out of my own way in so many different aspects of my life. And so with that in mind, I want to bring you 3 other faces, this time of the divine feminine. Let each one speak to you. And in these next 9 days, perhaps you can focus on what resonates with you and what feels right for you and for those around you. My first encounter with Durga was about 13 years ago when I was applying to go to seminary. And I found I had to write a letter of application, sort of a letter of motivation, if you will. And in it, I found myself, I tried not to overthink my letter because I was really just sort of pouring out my life, my journey, my desires. And it's always hard to be quite academic about those things. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to pour my heart into it. And I found myself talking about Durga because I had recently learned about her and was very struck by who she was. And she's the cutter, the destroyer, the ferocious one. And I'm pretty certain that there are certain moments, if you chart your life, you will understand that there are certain Durga moments when it almost feels like a bushfire has swept through your life. And of course, as we know, fires come to remove the old and make way for the new. And as creatures of habit, of course, we like to cling to all that we know, we're familiar with. But of course, as we also know, these are very often things that no longer serve us. So Durga is the blesser, and she blesses us with courage, with strength, protection, fearlessness. She has a fierce grace, it is said, and unconditional love. She's the fierce, protective mother of the universe. She's the warrior. She's willing to unleash her vengeance in order to combat evil forces that threaten our peace and our prosperity. She represents that part of the Supreme that wants to preserve moral order and righteousness and balance in our world and in creation. And in Sanskrit, I've learned that Durga means fort or a place that is difficult to overrun. How wonderful. And in her depiction, and after today's service, I hope you get a chance just to look them up, because there's so many beautiful depictions of these three goddesses that I want to bring you today. But if you look, you'll see that she is depicted with 8 arms. And in each of her hands, she's carrying a weapon, hence the warrior. And interestingly, each hand, if you're a Hindu, and Tina would be able to explain this better than I, but each hand is in a mudra. It has a meaning and a teaching all of its own. But inside the hand is the weapon. She's usually shown wearing a red sari, and the color red represents action. And often she's depicted as riding on a lion or a tiger. And the tiger symbolizes unlimited power. So she's riding in this unlimitedness. And the lion is the symbol of uncontrolled animalistic tendencies. We know those, the list could be long, such as anger, arrogance, greed, selfishness, jealousy, the desire to harm others. But she's riding on it. And her sitting on it reminds us that it is possible to control these I want to call them qualities, but perhaps aspects, our shadow side, so that we are not controlled by them. And what are those weapons? I'll go very quickly through them. Could take a lifetime to unpack, but I'll just summarize them as quickly as I can. In one hand is the weapon reminding us that it is our duty to righteousness. In the other is our, and I love this, our right, our God-given right to deep down soul happiness for ourselves and for others and for the life that we choose to lead. The next one is our awareness and our control over our shadow side. The next is the development of our character and our moral fiber. The next one is to non-attachment and to be, we'll talk about the lotus in a while, but to be like the lotus in the muddy water that gives life and shelter and beauty to others. The next one is devotion to good and the ability to surrender, actually, to surrender to life and to what is in order to make room for what can be. The next one is for courage, for all the demands that life exacts upon us. Our courage to be, our courage to do, our courage to surrender. And the last one, forgiveness, to forgive ourselves and to forgive others. I'll go very quickly through the next two. Lakshmi. Now, she is typically depicted, she's either standing or she's sitting on a lotus flower, and she holds 2 lotus flowers in 2 of her forehands. She actually has depicted as 4 hands. And the lotus, as you may know, is the symbol of purity and self-realization. And of course, the lotuses are able to grow in both clean and dirty water. In many cultures, they symbolize how good can in fact flourish in evil. I want to say that again. How good can flourish in evil and not be tainted. Her 4 arms represent the 4 essences of the Hindu life and what they strive for. And Tina did touch upon them. I'll just repeat them again. The first one is Dharma, which is the pursuit of an ethical and moral life. The second one is Kama, not karma, but Kama, which is emotional fulfillment and love. The third one is Moksha, which is the quest for self-knowledge and freedom. And the last one is Artha, which is abundance and prosperity. Like I say, if any of these are pinging for you and making sense and resonating, feel free to just jot them down, because we'll revisit before we finish today. And then the last one, Sarasvati, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom and the arts. She is the river of consciousness that enlivens creation. She is I love this, she's the dawn goddess, the one who rises, whose rays dispel the darkness. And in Hindu understanding, it's the darkness of shadow and the darkness of ignorance. Without her, there's only chaos and confusion. So to realize her, one must go beyond our own senses, our own understandings of pleasures and the human experience, and into the spirit realm. She wears nothing. If you look at her and her depiction, she wears nothing that would bring any attention to her. No jewels, no painting, no bright colors. She just has a white sari, and this to reflect her pure essence and her rejection of anything that is not. She transcends all of that, as I've said. And she rejoices in the power of the mind, which I love, and of pure wisdom. And she embodies all that we see that inspires us and calms us and enlivens us through nature. The four Vedas, so the essence of the wisdom traditions in Hinduism, are her children, or her sort of outworkings in our world. The books of universal knowledge, they're her offspring. And she's often depicted as being mounted on a swan, which is, again, that sense of purity and knowledge and wisdom and grace. And her herald is the peacock, a symbol of the arts. And I know that many of us consider ourselves a lover of the arts. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to include her today. I love this too, that schools and libraries are her temples. Isn't that magnificent? Books and pens and brushes, she are her tools. She is the cosmic artist. And musical instruments. In other words, she is creativity in all its guises. So to go back to the quotes of Deepak and of Robert Louis Stevenson. These three are examples of that which can enable us to heal ourselves and the world around us. She is our essence. They are our essence. And they are guiding us home to ourselves so that we may, in fact, reach our highest potential.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.